Hello darlings, I'm going to show you how you can make a cute vintage apron completely from scratch, no pattern required. This is a really great project for beginners. You don't need any fancy sewing skills. It's really easy to put together and you can probably do it within a day, within a couple of hours even. It's a really fun project and I'm going to show you step by step, bring you along on the process with me so you can make your own super cute vintage apron. Let's get into it. Alright, now for the creative process. You can get out your laptop or your device and start looking at some images that can inspire your apron design. I'm going for a 40s, 50s style and I will show you some images that I've used for inspiration. And then the next step is to start drawing down your designs so you know what your end product is going to look like. So get out your book and start drawing it all down. Here is a vintage inspired apron that I've made previously. You might recognize this one from Dining Through the Decades. I also made a blue 1940s style apron which I'm wearing in this picture that I gifted to my sister for Christmas. Okay, now we're going to lay out our fabric so we can start cutting out our apron pieces. Now if you already have an apron, I would be using this as my template. This is actually a great way, forget about the bodice part, but the skirt part of the apron, that's what you're going to be using as your template. But if you don't have an apron, don't worry, I'll put the exact measurements up on the screen for the rectangle size that you'll need. And it's going to be longer than this because this has been gathered. So we're going to be making it about this much wider so that we can allow for our gathers to take it in. I've got my fabric here, it's kind of like a 70s floral pattern and I'm either going to be making it with a trim of yellow or, actually that's my apron, or a white bed sheet as the trim. I haven't decided yet. I think it will come to me as I'm continuing to make it. So let's cut this out. Now I'm going to be spreading out my fabric of choice and laying my apron on top as the template. And if you don't have an apron skirt, the skirt width is going to be 48 inches wide and the skirt height is going to be 22 inches. So the skirt width that we're cutting out allows for room for the gathering. So you can extend that even further if you are wanting to make a large apron, and if you are wanting to make a longer apron, you can do that as well. This apron probably comes to just below my knees. Now here's a little vintage trick. I love to use pinking shears. They are great at finishing off your seams without having to fuss around with extra hemming and seam finishes. Now to create your heart-shaped bodice, you can use the bodice of your apron if you do have one. And if you don't have an apron, you can just measure out a rough estimate of what would cover your chest area down to your waist. And then you can fold this little square in half and then cut out a love heart. And the reason I like to fold the fabric in half is so I can get an absolutely perfect love heart. If you try and freehand it just with the open piece of fabric, it can come out a little bit lopsided. Now that we've cut out the bodice, we can measure how long the straps need to be. So you can literally just hold the measuring tape over your shoulder and have it long enough so that you can tie it up at the back. And if you have a mannequin that you could place the bodice on and measure the straps, that's even better. So I measured my strap length around 43-44 inches and I decided to go with a width of 4 inches so that would allow enough room for me to fold the fabric in half and sew that together. Alright, so I've cut out the main part of my apron with the skirt, the straps, the heart bodice, the little heart pocket, and we're ready to move on to the trimmings. So I ended up deciding to go with the white for my trims. So I'm laying out an old white bedsheet. So I'm measuring the circumference of the heart and the little heart pocket. So then I will double that circumference, and that will be our ruffles around the heart. So I measured the circumference of the heart bodice to be 48 inches, and I doubled that to 96 inches so that I would have enough room to create gathers and pull that in around the heart. And you can make these ruffles as thin or as thick as you want. I actually went for a bit more of a thick ruffle, and the end result is pretty voluminous and fluffy, but you can definitely make small ruffles and that will look really nice and dainty as well. Before we move on with the sewing project, let's hear about our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. It is a great place to explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Skillshare has multiple classes covering the topics of photography, illustration, productivity, lifestyle, and many more. And if you're like me and you like being creative, then I think you'll enjoy Rosalie Hazlett's class, Watercolour in the Woods, a beginner's guide to painting the natural world. In this quick 41-minute class, Rosalie helps us slow down and appreciate the world around us through watercolour painting. She shows us how to turn a reference photo of something around us into a beautifully layered piece of artwork. I can't wait to try out some of Rosalie's techniques for creating texture, like lifting the colour back out of your artwork to create highlights. Skillshare is created specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. A premium membership is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now that we have all the pieces for the apron cut out, we can start putting it together. So we're going to start by folding over for the hem of the apron skirt and along the sides as well. And we're going to leave the top edge raw because this will then be attached to the waistband. And this is where the beauty of the pinking shears come in. You can just simply fold this over and sew straight along for the hem because you're not going to have any fraying. And there we go, the skirt is all finished nicely. Now to create the gathering on the top of the skirt, we're going to change the stitch length to 4 and making sure that it's a straight stitch, and you're going to sew right along the top edge of the skirt. This is the largest stitch length, which means that it's going to allow room for us to pull the thread at either end to create gathers. And you want to make sure that you don't back stitch here because this needs to be pulled through. And you're just going to use one thread at a time and pull that through really gently. You have to be careful not to break the thread because if you do, you're going to have to run through the machine again and create another gathering stitch. Now once you've created your desired amount of gathers, you can hold that up on yourself to make sure that it fits you. If you need some more gathers, you can just go ahead and keep pulling that through. So because I'm happy with the amount of gathers that I have, I'm going to secure that in place with the double stitch at both ends of the gathering stitch. Moving on to the waistband, we're going to be pinning this right sides together to the skirt and sewing that along the top there. And after that, we can fold that over and then sew it on the other side. So now that we've pinned the waistband over to the other side, we're also going to extend along to the edges because these are going to form our loops on either side of our apron, which is where our straps are going to come through to tie at the back. Sewing the waistband down and then making sure to iron so everything is nice and flush and we don't have any crinkles or puffiness. And to form these little belt loops that I've been talking about, we're simply going to fold over and sew that down. Now at this point, feel free to try on your apron or put it on your mannequin so you can see how it hangs and to make sure that it's looking how you want it to. And I'm just going to attach the bodice to the upper half to see where I want that to sit on the waistband. And I also did notice that there needed to be some darts in the bodice because otherwise the heart was just gaping a little bit at the front. I'm just going to be finishing off the edges of the heart pocket and the bodice by rolling over that edge and sewing that down. Moving on to the straps, we're going to be folding them right sides together and sewing straight along. And once you've created this little tube for the straps, you can then turn this the right way around. You can either just feed that through like I'm doing, or you can put a safety pin in there and pull that through. That really helps to make the process go a little bit faster. And don't forget to iron, that's the most important thing. Your garment's just not going to look professional if you skip the ironing process. It really makes a huge difference. To finish off the ends of the straps, I tucked the ends in and ironed that flat. Now for the heart pocket, I used the exact same method as the bodice, and I measured the ruffles out and doubled the length of the circumference of the heart so I can then create my cute little ruffles that go all the way around. So I'm just going to hem one side of the ruffles and then the other side I'm going to create the gathering stitch. And again, to create the gathers, I'm going to hold one piece of thread and pull the gathers through. And to make sure I have the right length, I'm going to just measure that it fits my little heart pocket, and if it doesn't, I'll either create more gathers or loosen it up a bit. Before attaching the ruffles to the heart, I decided that I wanted to actually add a bit of interfacing. This can really help when you want to make something sturdy and durable. And to make my life easier, it is iron-on interfacing, so it's super simple to apply. I then repeated the exact same process I used for the little heart pocket on the heart bodice. So I made sure to measure that I had the right amount of ruffles, and then I pinned that all in place before sewing it down. Make sure to take your time when sewing around awkward bends. It might turn out messy if you try and rush through it, so really just pace yourself and gently sew around the corners. Next up, we're going to fix our straps to our bodice and the bottom point of the heart, fix that to the waist and sew that together. And on the back, this is how the loops work. The straps come through as they crisscross over the back and tie together around the waist. Now I'm just adding the finishing touches, making sure that everything's perfect, and I also decided to sew a little bow to add onto the bodice, and I just used the exact same method as I did for the shoulder straps, and the length for this bow is 23 inches, and you can make that as thick as you want. And we're just going to secure that to the middle, sew that on, and then tie it in a bow. Thank you so much for watching. I always have so much fun creating my own vintage aprons, so I hope you were able to be inspired by this video and maybe consider making your own vintage apron too. I'll see you next week. Bye!